Welcome and thank you all for joining us for this episode of the Crexi Podcast, an insider's look at all things commercial real estate. I'm your host, Yannis Papadakis, Business Development Manager at Crexi, and today we are thrilled to be sitting down with Barry Wolfe, Senior Managing Director at Marcus Millichap. Now, before we dive in, a little bit about our guest. Barry is a Senior Director of both Marcus Millichap's National Retail Division and Net Lease Properties Division. Barry specializes in the sale of single-tenant properties and shopping centers. He has successfully assisted in clients in selling more than 705 properties with a total value exceeding $2 billion, having closed sales in over 40 states across the United States. Barry is frequently quoted in publications like Chain Store Age, Restaurant Business Magazine, and The Real Deal regarding matters affecting the real estate market. Barry is an active member of the International Council of Shopping Centers. Prior to joining Marcus Millichap in 2001, Barry was a practicing attorney for nearly a decade, initially in private practice with a transactional real estate focus. For an attorney in private practice, Barry represented many developers and several national restaurant chains. Subsequently, he served as in-house counsel for a publicly traded New York Stock Exchange company, where he ran the legal real estate department. Barry's legal background frequently proves invaluable in helping his clients navigate the landmines inherent in real estate transactions. And with that, let's dive into it.
Thanks so much.
Barry,
I appreciate the intro. Good to be here with you.
Great to have you. Great to have you. Now, we've just covered your impressive background, but I'd love to explore it in a little bit more detail. How did you first get into commercial real estate?
Well, out of law school, so I started as an attorney out of law school, and the firm I worked at was founded by my father. So happens we had a commercial real estate focus, or a primary focus, and just kind of ended up jumping into it there. I mean, I always tell folks it dates me a little bit, and that at the time we were working with Walmart and Kmart developers. At the time, Kmart and Walmart were kind of neck and neck, believe it or not. Kmart was in big growth mode and was kind of still the big gorilla of the market. If anything, they were probably bigger than Walmart at the moment. That obviously has changed. So just had the opportunity to work with commercial real estate, work with a lot of restaurant chains, like that said, and then ended up going in-house with a retailer, Aaron's Inc. So just kind of always been in the retail sector since I started working back in 1993.
Interesting. Now, more recently, you've included dispensaries and dispensary product to your single tenant kind of inventory. Can you talk a little bit about, kind of how that transition grew? Where did that come from?
Yeah, I saw the opportunity. This is probably going back about 4 or 5-ish years ago. I just saw what was happening with cannabis real estate, that the brands were expanding, the business was expanding, and just saw an opportunity that frankly realized or thought that a lot of brokers, a lot of companies weren't going to be able to get, or maybe wouldn't be able to, or wouldn't want to get into the sector. In fact, I kind of asked permission at our company. Is it okay to sell cannabis dispensaries? I mean, it is, federally it is illegal. Got the blessing that it wasn't an issue, and just saw an opportunity that there's a lot of brokers with what we do, selling single tenant net lease real estate. And here's an avenue I felt like that maybe be a little bit less crowded, and decided to get into it again, probably about 3 to 4 years or so ago, and started diving into it, and kind of been selling those the last few years.
Excellent. Well, we're going to jump into that in a little bit. But before we do, I'm curious to hear a little bit about kind of your career path in terms of how you grew into the space that you're in now. Who were some of your mentors and how did they help shape your career path?
Well, I got into the brokerage side back in 2001. So it's been, at this point, right at 21 years, and started with Marcus and Millichap, looked at a bunch of different companies. And at that point, I had no sales skills, no training whatsoever. Certainly had never worked in a commission business, and came upon Marcus and Millichap through actually a client, and interviewed there and met with some folks, and saw the training was really solid and strong, and felt like it gave me a best opportunity. And at that point, Gene Berman, who was my manager back in 2001, I would say was certainly a mentor of mine. Worked with Gene for many years before he retired. And Kirk Felici, who is still in the business, it was also a mentor of mine, and directly helped me learn the business, and grow those sales skills and learn about commercial real estate. On the brokerage side, I knew it on the legal side, but had no clue on the brokerage side. I didn't know what a cap rate was, didn't know what NOIs were, just wasn't involved in that side of the business. So the two of them in particular helped me learn the business from the brokerage side and the sales side.
Now, what were some of the lessons that you learned early on that became invaluable going forward? Like, were there any, it's called favorite mistakes or moments that kind of course corrected you onto your current path that at the time you didn't recognize were opportunities?
It's funny. There was a guy that was initially acting, I guess I'd say, as a mentor. He was a really not a very good one for a month or so when I first got into the business. But one, I'm not going to, he's actually has passed away, but I'm not going to mention any names. But one, I guess it turned out to be a lesson, and it probably it helped me a lot. In one of his lessons and one of the ways he really wasn't a very good mentor, he mentioned to me, look, you're never going to make it in the business. You'll be out of this business in the first 6 months because no attorney can do what we do, because you're going to kill all your deals. You're going to be looking for, as an attorney, you're going to be analyzing all these deals. You're going to kill all your own deals. So he didn't say it very nicely, but it probably was a lesson maybe I needed. I don't know that I would have thought of it, and maybe I would have killed all my own deals, kind of looking at it from an attorney's point of view. And it taught me, okay, that's something I guess I don't want to do. So I took that, instead of it being a negative where I literally go start raising all the problems in the deal and ultimately they don't close because I create roadblocks. It helped me, kind of the superpower, I almost look at it, that I'm able to kind of see what's coming down the path from a legal standpoint, from a title standpoint, all these issues that might be out there. But instead of them killing the deal, I actually see them beforehand and am able to figure out how do we navigate through those landmines and get the deal to a closing. So it started a negative, or what could have been a negative, and I was able to turn it into a positive that's helped me for the last 21 years and getting a lot of deals closed.
Excellent. Wow. Well, with that, let's dive into our second topic and kind of revisit what we had touched on earlier about the cannabis space.
Sure.
Cannabis retail properties and opportunities in the dispensary space. What's currently happening in the retail-focused cannabis space?
It's interesting. I mean, so we've seen a lot of expansion, but it obviously it varies state to state. Cannabis is where it's unique, unlike any other sector of commercial real estate, is federally it's illegal. It's a Schedule I drug, so you can't operate federally under federal law, but it's obviously legal under many state laws and regulations. So it's unlike any other in the history of real estate. There's really no comparison by it where you've got something that's federally illegal, but it still is operating and growing. So it really, what's happening and what's changing, it just varies very much state to state, because it can only be legal in the states that allow it. And some states are, I'm sure you know, some states are recreational legal, some states are medically legal. Some states have just passed and just become legal, so they're still very much in growth state, whereas other states like California and Colorado are more mature. New York is a state that's just starting to open up, and it's kind of a cluster, right now. So it really varies very much state to state, county to county, region to region, city to city. So there's really no commonality of, here's what it is all across the country.
So with that being said, it sounds like there's probably a lot of variability from deal to deal in terms of how you have to evaluate it. My next question is, what are the fundamentals of this retail subsector? And I'm sure there are some, universal truths about those fundamentals, but it's got to be different too, state to state as well. What's fundamentally good in this state for a dispensary may not be as positive in this state due to some regulations that are there. Can you talk about some of the things overarching that, might be universal in terms of, what are those fundamentals that you're looking at, as an investor looking to enter the space?
Yeah, I think I tend to look at it, the fundamental, I would look at it as still the quality of the real estate. That's kind of the lens I always start with, is what does the real estate actually look like? And that can vary, again, state to state and sector to sector, but just looking at, does it look like a good location? Why are they here? Cannabis cannot go everywhere that, a dollar store or a restaurant can operate. There's zoning restrictions that again, very county to county, so jurisdiction to jurisdiction. Generally speaking, they can't go across the street from a school or a church. So you kind of got some restrictions, some zoning wise, but I'd say fundamental is a good way to put it. I kind of tend to start at what does the dirt actually look like? What is the access? What is the visibility? What can I do here if for some reason the cannabis operator can't make it? So those are kind of the lens that I start to look at deals through.
So you're really the same quality fundamentals that you'd be looking at in any other kind of asset is kind of the
Correct.
starting point. As you
Yeah.
move past that starting point, what do you start to see that's special to the cannabis sector? For example, security requirements or zoning, that sort of thing.
Yeah, well, they can't go everywhere. So there's some zoning restrictions that may limit where they can't go in a location they may like to go into. Security certainly is something they look at very closely, and that's a positive if you're buying cannabis, is they tend to have really good security. A lot of video surveillance and other aspects that I think are just great as an owner. You could feel like your property is going to be very well protected. So those would be a couple of things that you look at pretty closely, and then again, just the real estate, the access, the visibility. Certainly, they're going to look at the competition where other operators. Some jurisdictions and counties only allow a limited number of licenses or a limited number of locations to be open. And once they've met that, you can't open more locations, more dispensaries. So that's certainly the type of thing we look at closely as well.
Sounds like those barriers to entry really are a huge benefit to owners of these properties, considering that, chances are, one can't pop up right across the street from you, or there's less of a likelihood of that happening than, let's say, another QSR springing up.
Yeah, no, exactly. We've got a Beyond Hello dispensary we have on the market in Santa Barbara, which I guess is kind of in your neck of the woods. And one of the positives exactly is they filled. There can be no more dispensaries open in that jurisdiction in Santa Barbara or in that county. So exactly, you've got even if this tenant doesn't make it, and there's no reason to think they won't. But if they don't, it's going to be a very high demand space because you can't open more dispensaries in that area. So exactly, there are some real benefits. You're right that once you've got it zoned appropriately. You've got some good security there as an investor, as an owner.
Now, let's talk a little bit about buyer demographics. Have they shifted, or at least have you noticed any kind of shift in buyer demographics in the cannabis retail space? And if there has been a shift, what have you noticed, especially as new markets become legalized?
Yeah, I think there really has been a shift there. And that's one of the things we've worked really closely on, is kind of pushing that shift to a degree. When we first started selling these deals, again, probably about 3 or so years ago, the buyers were really just buyers that were they were used to cannabis. Maybe they were a user of cannabis. In fact, the first couple of the deals we sold to former professional athletes that were a user of the product in their professional life. And that changed in the last few years. We've really shifted that more to 1031 investors. I mean, it really has become, we've worked to coach investors into getting comfortable with the sector, being comfortable with cannabis. And we've had a couple times where buyers or attorneys, we had to get them comfortable that it's not totally illegal. I mean, their property is not going to get seized by the government. We've got somebody who just joining us. So we've had to really get comfortable, buyers and attorneys comfortable. I mean, I've had a couple of deals where the attorneys were saying this is illegal. You realize, coaching their clients that you realize the government could come and seize your property and seize your assets, seize your money, and we've had to get them comfortable. That's nonsense. That's not the case at all. So that's been something we've had to get buyers comfortable with. But once they've done their homework and looked into these tenants and got comfortable with the tenants, they realize, okay, these are public companies, not on the New York Stock Exchange, not on the U.S. Stock Exchange, so they can't do that yet. But they're real legit companies. These are billion-dollar entities. Their sales are through the roof. They do tremendous sales volume in these stores. And just them getting comfortable. We've had multiple buyers and investors that 2 years ago would not consider cannabis and have come back to us and said, you know what, I've done some homework, or I'm seeing more of these open up in my backyard. I'm willing to invest in cannabis. I'm actually interested in this as an investment. And they see it's a sector that's not going anywhere. It's fun. It's interesting. I was talking with somebody earlier today brought up, they said, look, I've got a buddy of mine is a user of cannabis, and medically it's been a tremendous benefit to them. It's changed their life. And I love hearing stories like that. It's somebody that was having a lot of health issues and were on heavy drugs that are you don't want to be on, and they ended up going on cannabis, and now they're not on all these heavy narcotics, and it's changed their life. And yeah, yes, there are recreational benefits, just like somebody who's drinking alcohol or having a glass of wine. I get that. That's fine. But there really are tremendous medical uses and benefits to cannabis. And folks have, as they've talked to more and more people, they see that it's not just this product that had this terrible reputation back in the 60s. And it really has tremendous health benefits. And, recreationally, if you want to partake, I think we've opened up enough to the point where there's nothing wrong with that either, as long as you do it in moderation and in a good way, and don't do it and drive, just like you wouldn't drink alcohol and drive. But no, I think people have come around to realize this is a real product. It's a real service in reality.
Absolutely. And, I think, part of that too is as the perception of cannabis changes, as it becomes more widely accepted and used, for,
Right.
Various medical reasons. And you're going to see a softening in terms of people's, perception of it, both, in their town, in their shopping center, what have you.
And
What
I think
are some of the,
also, not to interrupt, but also I was going to say people realizing it's not a bad element. I think people are still picturing these, head shop and these, back when I was an attorney, you'd have noxious use clauses in all your leases, and they'd always have head shop and referencing along those ways about illegal drug activity, and that's not what these are. I always tell folks, if you go walk in these stores, these far more resemble an Apple store than a backdoor drug paraphernalia store of some sort.
right.
I mean, they're really clean. They're very professionally designed. They look fantastic. The product's presented very professionally in open atmosphere, open air. I mean, they're great looking stores, generally speaking.
Yeah. Yeah, and I would argue too that the absence of those legal avenues are what really create the seedy black market element of if people are going to get cannabis, they're probably going to some underground dealer that's got wall to wall carpets and fish tanks with piranhas in them or something, as opposed to an Apple store where it's regulated, there's security. The product is being tested regularly to make sure that it's safe for consumption
And that's
versus just
so
flying under the radar.
Yeah, and that's so important. I mean, I know in California, the market is really facing a lot of challenges because, frankly, they're having a hard time competing with the black market. You can buy cannabis and other drugs a whole lot cheaper just on the side of on the street corner than going to a dispensary because the drug dealer is not paying taxes. Cannabis on the legal side is taxed very heavily. They've got a lot of regulations, and it's very difficult in that regard. But the challenge is, like I told you, the person I was talking to that's benefited from cannabis is if you go get it off the street corner, you don't know what it's been laced with, you don't know what's in it, you don't know the dosage at all. It's so dangerous to buy any of those, cannabis or anything off the street corner. Whereas here, it's all the dosage is all regulated, it's all been tested, it's regulated. I think folks
Right.
need to realize if you're buying for less money off the street, you're putting your life at risk in reality, as opposed
Yeah.
to buying quality product that's been tested and regulated to the nth degree. And yes, it's more expensive because these companies are heavily taxed, but there's a reason for that.
Right. Right. I mean, you wouldn't buy somebody's homemade, Advil, because they said it's going to get rid of your headache, right? Uh,
Exactly.
Now, moving forward, what challenges or obstacles do investors need to consider when doing their due diligence on these properties?
Well, I think you need to go in. I mean, generally speaking, financing is a challenge. So these are generally of the deals we've sold, which are we've sold about 30 plus of these in the last 18 months. All but two of those were all cash. Financing was starting to open up some. I think financing right now, any property is tough at the moment. Just multifamily, a Taco Bell, whatever it is rates have obviously gone up. Leverage has been compressed. So nothing's easy to finance right now. Cannabis is even more challenging. So you got to go in with that open mind that if you're looking for financing, I mean, we get calls all the time with somebody who might be looking at cannabis. Well, I need a 80% loan to value at a rate no more than 5%, non-recourse. Well, you're not getting that. You're not going to get that on anything right now, but you're certainly not getting that on cannabis. So the leverage, if there is debt available, the leverage is lower. The rates tend to be a little bit higher. It's going to be recourse. So I think that's kind of the first thing we coach folks that they've got to be acclimated to. If you're a heavy leverage investor, it's probably not the right product for you. That's the main thing, is just kind of getting your arms around that it's typically going to be all cash or very low leverage. That could change down the road. There are banking regulations that we're hoping will change, and banking, I think, will open up in the coming years. But right now, it's largely a cash business, and that relates to the real estate.
Got it. So what does the future hold for the cannabis retail space? What do you take a look into your crystal ball and tell us what you see coming down the pipe?
Yeah, again, it changes state to state. I mean, we're seeing states that were totally illegal or jumping into medical marijuana. It tends to be the first step, going to medical and then recreational. There's states like Florida that the expectation is, when Florida is a great market for it, will become recreational potentially in the next the next main election, which happens to be the presidential election. I think the thought is maybe like in Florida in a couple of years we go rec. So there's markets that are transitioning in that, and states like Alabama that were totally illegal, and Georgia that are now starting to become medically legal. But again, it changes. It's more state to state level. I think there's an expectation that we may eventually get to where this is federally legal. I don't think that's coming in the next few years. What Biden has been pushing for, and he proposed, was to have it no longer be a Schedule I drug, along with heroin and other drugs that that we all would agree are very dangerous. So I think that's probably the next step federally, is potentially it's no longer a Schedule I drug, and that would have some real impact as well. That could open it up to other companies and potentially lenders to get into it that don't now. There's also something called safe banking that we thought was going to pass in December. It did not pass in December. So that could be forthcoming later this year, in the next couple of years. And what that would do is open up banking for the cannabis operators. They're very heavily taxed. There could be some tax reform coming with cannabis operators that would help them from a profitability standpoint. I think we're going to see some changes federally, probably more on the classification and on safe banking, that could help the operators and potentially owners of the real estate as well to have more access to capital on the finance side.
Awesome. All right, Barry, given your specialized background and expertise, I'm sure our listeners would appreciate getting some answers to a few rapid fire questions and words of advice. If you don't mind me shooting a couple at you.
Sure.
All right. So if you were given $10 million today, tax-free, had to invest it all immediately, what would your go-to asset type and location be? Why?
I think it depends. It's a great question. I think it depends, just like everything in life, that changes person to person. I mean, are you looking for, I guess if you're asking me, am I looking to be more involved day to day in the operations of the real estate? If so, I probably would gravitate towards multifamily or industrial real estate. Multifamily, I like. Everybody needs a place to live. Retail has really has had great legs and is doing much better than I think folks thought it might be a couple of years ago going into COVID. But I probably retail as well, certainly. But if I'm looking more passive investment, mailbox money, I love these single tenant retail deals, or like 2 or 3 tenant retail deals where there's you've got a long term lease with a good quality tenant, potentially cannabis, potentially a QSR fast food operator, something like that. I'd definitely be a fan of those if I'm looking for more passive investment where it's not so much value add, or so those would be another play as well, another avenue that I'm very bullish on and really like.
Excellent. What's your, and this is not a trick question, favorite tool or software that you use on the job?
We use, to manage our business, we use a website and a software called Smartsheet. I mean, obviously we do use Crexi, kind of throwing a shout out to you guys, but on a day-to-day basis, we use Smartsheet as a great program. It's kind of Excel based of sorts that we run our entire business on, as far as tracking deadlines, tracking deals, tracking offers. I had a developer tip me to that. We were looking for something just like a dashboard of sort. We'd close about 75 deals every year. So we've always got a lot of deals going on. At any one time, we probably got 40 or 50 active listings. So just we need something to help us manage that, kind of a dashboard of sorts, manage offers. And we stumbled across Smartsheet probably 6-7 years ago, and have really been very much relying on it to help us with our business ever since.
Excellent. And then what is the most common misconception about your job or industry?
That's a good one. I think probably the most common misconception I get all the time, we'll be talking to a developer and owner, and they'll say, well, I've talked to somebody at your company, or I've talked with a broker already. I think, well, you guys are all the same. And I always tell folks, I get it. You talk with a broker, you talk with somebody at Marcus and Millichap. Everybody's not the same. I mean, frankly, there's just like any business, there's really good brokers. I like to think I'm one of those. And there's some that are newer to the business or just aren't as good, aren't as knowledgeable. I mean, I was an attorney for 10 years. Not every broker was an attorney for 10 years and can kind of foresee legal issues that might be forthcoming, or landmines that are forthcoming. So I think that'd be the main one. It's just like, you guys are all the same. And in reality, we're not.
Right. Well, as we wrap up, any advice that you would give newcomers or developing professionals looking to explore working in the cannabis commercial real estate space?
I'd say on the broker side or in general, just in
general. Yeah.
I'd say I always advise folks, with whether it's getting into brokerage or getting into any business, read. Go study. If you're looking at cannabis, go study the market. Go read a lot. Go read trade publications. I mean, on cannabis, I subscribe to about a half dozen email and periodical publications that I read literally every single day, and do the same with other publications. I mean, Nation's Restaurant News, Globe Street, Real Deal, all sorts of publications. I get probably 40 emails literally every single day from different periodicals and trade publications. And the Wall Street Journal that I read, I take an hour or so a day just studying and reading, and what's happening in the sector, what's happening in all across the real estate industry, what's happening in finance, what's happening with just the economy. And just I think that if you're new to the business, even if you're not new, go study and go read whatever it is you're in, and go learn the business so you can bring value to your clients and customers, and have an idea of what's coming down the road.
100%. Excellent. Any parting words you want to share with our audience before we sign off?
No, I appreciate the opportunity to join you. I know you guys are extremely attuned to the market, and you guys were fantastic to talk to as we were getting ready for this podcast. And I appreciate the opportunity to be joining with you and talk about the business.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for joining us. It's always great to hear your insights, especially on such timely and important topics. We really appreciate your time today. I know you're very busy, so thank you for taking time this morning to sit down and chat with us.
Yeah, thanks so much. And if anybody ever needs me, you can reach me a great way via LinkedIn. I'm pretty active on there, posting almost every day. That's probably just a good way to find me. Send me a DM, and my contact info is on there too. So reach out to me anytime. But thanks so much for your time.
Thank you, Barry. And thanks to everyone who tuned in today. If you enjoyed this episode, do not miss the next one. Visit go.crexi.com/podcast and sign up to get the next episode delivered straight to your inbox. Of course, you can also subscribe to the Crexi Podcast on your favorite podcast app, and check out our YouTube channel for video recordings of each episode. Thank you for almost there. Take care, and be sure to tune in next time.